Hotel workers, what is your craziest story? I have a friend that owns a small motel just off a highway. I would hang out with him, and chat on some late nights. One night, he got a call that one of the guests heard a loud crash in the room next door. Checked the computer, and saw that the room was unoccupied. Friend and I go to check it out. We knock, and there is no answer. He opens the door and there was a cat in the room. It knocked over a lamp and smashed it. It was super friendly and came right to us. We took it back to the office and looked at the room records. The prior person that was in the room abandoned the cat when he checked out 3 days earlier. He was already on the other side of the country when we called him, and he said he was not coming back for the cat. My friend took ownership of the cat, and now she is the motel cat. She walks all around the property and takes care of any mice or critters. She even has her picture on the wall as one of the employees. Not sure why the maid service did not see it when the room was being cleaned. We think that the vacuum scared the cat, and she hid somewhere. Still was a D-move of the old owner to leave the cat behind. Some guest was in the parking lot, waving a gun around, and threatening to shoot up the place, resulting in a tense standoff with cops, for about an hour, before they finally took him down, alive. The impetus behind the whole thing? He, his buddy, and the buddy's wife, had gone out that night, with the intent that the wife was gonna let the gun guy F her up the ass. But she got cold feet at the last minute, and they locked him out of the room when he got mad. So, yeah, he was so drunk, and wanted to tap that ass so badly, that he decided to threaten a whole hotel. Cleaning rooms one summer, entered checkout guest's bathroom, and noticed rolled up towels on the floor, pretty common. I start picking them up, hidden underneath pile of human shit. I open the shower curtain, as I begin to smell an overpowering stench of shit. I find at least 10 dumps in the shower, mixed with piss. The toilet, clean as F. Doesn't look like it was even used. I quit that day. There needs to be some kind of international, do not rent to this person, under any circumstances, blacklist. Filling the tub with shit would be an automatic addition to that list. Either people would smarten up, or they'd be one and done, never able to get a hotel room, anywhere, ever again. I used to work at a hotel. I post on these guests often, and I always intend on doing so. 3 guests come to mind. 1. Guests swiped in the towels, smeared it on the walls, and laughed at housekeeping when they came in for service. 2. Young lady, who was certainly no lady, stuck her used tampon on the bathroom wall. The blood acted as a glue, and cemented itself there. It had to be pried off. 3. Guests left 3-week-old expired milk in the fridge. But they were only in-house for 3 days, so that means it was already 2.5 weeks expired when they checked in. Who lugs around rotten milk? High-strung cook had an argument with A-type bistro attendant. It just kept escalating to a pull-apart brawl when a kitchen knife got involved. The pair crashed through the swinging door and was rolling on the carpet when the regional manager just happened to be walking in. Cops were called. I think both got fired or arrested. Did you mean fired and arrested? I know that the cook ended up at a different location. They had this way of shifting bad apples when stuff went down. I feel like the girl half of it did get fired. She was the potential stabber, but they didn't press charges. To be fair, the cook, while something of a prick, really wasn't in the wrong that day. She took everything as a stepping stone and yelled when it didn't work out. When I was 15, I was a busboy at a local resort, Little America, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Occasionally, the restaurant I worked in would ask one of the bus staff to deliver room service to one of the rooms. They always asked male staff, for safety reasons. On one occasion, I was asked to deliver a tray to a room. I took the tray to the room, and a scantily clad woman answered the door. I never went in the room, but could see there were about 8 to 9 men and women in their 60s, 70s, almost all of them nude, in the room. Even at 15, I knew the room smelled like sex. I remember I was tipped well. Went back to work, no one ever asked how things went, and I never really mentioned it to anyone, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Lots of hotel guests were in for a conference. One night, about 10:30 p.m., a guy walks down from his room to the bellhop desk, in nothing but tightly windies, a bed sheet wrapped around his body from head to toe, and blood dripping from his face. This guy sounded out of it, either from being concussed, inebriated, high on drugs, or a mix of the three. He informed security that he and his boyfriend got into a fight. So, two security officers, one a supervisor, went to the room to question the other boyfriend, while another security officer waited with the bloodied boyfriend, behind the bellhop desk, for an ambulance to arrive. Up at the room, security was informed that the bloodied boyfriend had been passed out drunk, and had crapped in one of the beds, when the other boyfriend had walked into the room, with his wife and two kids, all of whom had been enjoying a night on the town. Both men were co-workers, who were in for the conference. Supposedly, the family man had given the suite room key to his boyfriend, with the expectations that they do the deed during conference hours. All the while, the wife and kids explored the city during the day. Back at the bellhop desk, the security supervisor relays the discovered info to the bloodied boyfriend, which sets the guy off. He tackles the security supervisor to the ground. Blood and crap stained the hotel carpet, and the supervisor's suit, as he finally cuffed the bloodied boyfriend. Cops are called, and the guy gets taken away, before getting inspected by medics. The moral of the story: if you want to cheat on your wife with someone else in a hotel, do your business in the smaller, uglier room, and not the large, expensive suite you share with your family. TLDR, family man catches inebriated boyfriend in crap-stained bed, kicks the boyfriend's half-naked ass, who then proceeds to get his half-naked ass kicked again by the security supervisor. This kind of counts. It wasn't a short-term stay hotel, but was built like one, and I was a doorman. I have a few stories from that place. I used to work as a doorman in an apartment complex, populated by a number of odd characters. One of them was a woman who was schizophrenic. She lived there on rent assistance, and got disability payments. Generally, when she was taking her medications, she was still a full bubble off level. Her delusions were all religion-based, with demons, and her neighbors casting spells on her, through the walls. She cut up the walls and floor, with a knife, to try to stop the spells. That sort of thing. But every 6 months, she needed to get evaluated, to keep her assistance checks coming. The way this should work is, that the caseworker would stop in, see that she is taking her meds, she isn't too crazy, check the box, she keeps the assistance. But she didn't see it that way. If the caseworker saw her acting normal, then the caseworker might think she is cured, and didn't need the assistance. So, she would go off the meds, for a few days, and then would have an episode. One day, she comes to the lobby to tell me that when she was in the elevator, Satan R her in her ass, with his tail. I checked the elevator. No Satan, no ectoplasm, no readings on the PKE meter. So, then I asked her if she was maybe R by a man on the elevator. Given the type of residents we get, Rists, mother RSTS, father stabbers, father Rist, litter bugs who create a nuisance, it was entirely possible. It took a while, but she told me that it was the actual, red-colored Satan with pitchfork, horns, and pointy tail, and it was the actual Satan's tail that R her in her ass, and she needs to go to the hospital, because now she has a demon inside her. So, I had to call for an ambulance. Before the EMS crew shows up, 2 cops arrive. One is super annoyed to have to be there. And he is even more annoyed that his partner seems genuinely interested to hear about Satan, and the demons, and the neighbors casting perverted sex spells through the walls, to make her horny. EMS arrives, and they bring in a gurney and set it up. They take her vital signs and tell her that they will take her to the Catholic hospital. The ambulance company probably is getting money for certain referrals, so they are insisting on Catholic. She wants to go to the Jewish hospital, which is not only larger, but much closer. There is a standoff between her wanting to go to Jewish, and the crew wanting to go to Catholic. Normally, the patient's wishes should be honored, but the EMS crew does not want their boss reaming them over the missed kickback. Finally, the paramedic says, "You got R by Satan, and you have a demon in you, right? Well, then we need to go to Catholic, because Jews don't know anything about removing demons, and the Catholics do it all the time." So, she says okay, and jumps up on the gurney. A couple days later, she is on her meds again. The caseworker gets to see her crazy episode, and the checks keep coming, for another 6 months. Teenagers in the apartments decided they needed to join gangs. So, they set up their own local wannabe Crips and Bloods. They put on blue versus red flannel shirts and t-shirts. Then they had a fight. They used pepper spray on each other. The front door opens and in runs a kid in a red shirt, and the back door opens and in runs a kid in a blue shirt. They have tears and snot running down their faces from the pepper spray. I am stuck standing between them as they face off. I just moved out of the way and say, "Go at it." and they both got in the same elevator, to run home to mom. About the middle of the night, a naked woman goes off the 9th floor balcony. I was the first one there, and watched her die. She took a few agonal breaths, and there was nothing anyone could do, as she was pulverized inside. The story was, that she and her boyfriend, were into bondage games, which is fine, but he woke up to see, she had used a bed sheet, to hang herself from the balcony, with the other end tied, to the leg of a couch. He cut the bedsheet, with a butcher knife, to save her from hanging, but she fell. She did have a corner of a cut bedsheet, around her neck, in a loose half-hitch. It is hard to believe his story, but he was not charged. Working at a small boutique place, just starting my day shift at about 6:30 a.m. Hadn't even had my coffee yet. A woman came to the desk, visibly shaken. She tells me, "I can't find my husband. He's not in the room, and all his clothes are still there. He's a sleepwalker and I'm worried that he has wandered into another room." At this point, I start to chuckle a bit to myself, but quickly stop with the thought, of a screaming woman finding a naked stranger in her room. First thought is to check the CCTV. We head up to the first floor. Our CCTV is actually in the back of our linen storage, and I bring the woman with me, not even sure why I did. Probably because she wanted to come. Soon as I got the door open and the lights on, there was her naked husband sleeping spread across our bundle duvet covers, with one open half covering him. She woke him up, and of course he had no effing idea where he was. She wrapped him up and took him back to bed. They checked out later, and the dude was bashful as hell. I told him not to worry about it, as he gave me a great story to share, and let him know, I would tell anyone who would listen. And I plan to. Was just about to start my shift in the morning, and was chatting with a coworker outside, while she had a smoke. It was still dark out, and out of nowhere, this guy muttering something about his dead family came up to us with a 2x4, and raised it up to hit my coworker in the head. I just reacted and stepped between them, and raised my arm to take the blow. And the guy just stopped mid-swing. He was face to face with me, with this 2x4 raised baseball bat style, and then he just ran off, and dropped it. My co-worker ran up and grabbed it after, so he couldn't use it again, and when we brought it inside, that's when we realized, it was full of nails. Very glad, neither of us, got hit with that. I have plenty of other crazy stories, but that one takes the cake for the scariest, for sure. I'll keep these as short as possible, because I have a ton. Cleaned a family room, which had a main double bed, and a separate room for 2 singles. The singles bedroom was littered with lingerie of every type and color, crazy stuff. When we were walking out of the room, we bumped into the family of mom, dad, and their 2 14 or 13-year-old daughters. The lingerie belonged to the daughters. A woman got fired for pooping in the guest's room. She got caught, because the guest came back to the room and found her. Had a local rock star stay for a while. On their last night, they trashed the room in ways that still amaze me. Didn't know cocaine was meant to be mixed with feces, for an abstract art piece, on the curtains. Had a very high-profile celebrity stay in the hotel, kind of a hero of mine, so I worked up the courage to go speak to them, knocked on the door, and eventually let myself in, under the guise of housekeeping inspection. Found the celebrity playing For Elise, however you spell it, on the grand piano, took it in and left shortly after. Had a very high net worth individual stay at the hotel for over a month. About 2 weeks in, they snuck into the staff access areas, and found their way to us, 2 a.m. and doing closing. He apologized, and asked, if he could have a peanut butter sandwich, and just chill for a bit. So, we sat with this person, who was worth billions, while he chewed on a PB and we spoke about sports. He claimed, he had had too much fancy food and shit company and just wanted to chill, with real people. Security body slammed a prostitute, who was 3 times his size, because she refused to leave, after the guest got cold feet. Had a prostitute inflict thousands of dollars worth of damage to a room, because her mark refused to pay her usual rate. Her exact words, "Pay me what I'm worth, or I'll destroy this place." Had a tour group stay in the hotel, and got the rooms, took everything, phones, curtains, mirrors, everything. A piece of construction equipment failed and crushed a construction worker, in front of a group of staff, that reported to me. The hotel's response was, to buy them McDonald's and tell them, to STFU about it. Many more. Hospitality is an effing wild profession. Edit, I've kept the details vague for obvious reasons, but I will provide a bit more detail on a few of the points. The woman that was fired was caught literally pants down, not a dismissible offense in and of itself, but she responded badly to the guest, finding her there. I did not break protocol when visiting the celebrity's room, just hustled my way into being the one to do the necessary turn-down check for that day, all above board. The security officer was a small gentleman, and the prostitute was a large woman, but he tossed her to the ground, in a way that surprised them both, I think. The agency that booked the tour group with the hotel were submitted an invoice. I'm not sure if they paid it, but the rooms were back up to scratch within a week or so. One of my friends, who runs events, does a lot of business with hotels. He's always got stories of how hotels handle stuff, and it's insane what they go through. The one that sticks in my head is that some function had some huge event, not sure what for, but their main ceremony hired a stage magician. I'm not sure what they expected, but they got some guy who looked a lot like the Tim Burton version of Willy Wonka, long hair, a little effeminate, velvet suit, and very awkward. I am not sure what they asked him to do, but what he did on stage was very odd. For a main ceremony, he did a few parlor magic tricks, before going into a very long story about how he learned how to hypnotize people to do his bidding, from some descendant prodigy of Franz Anton Mesmer himself. He claimed to have learned Sanskrit chanting or something from the wisdom of Himalayan monks, and to show his skill, he preferred young ladies in the audience. The people who hired him were immediately alarmed in the direction this was going, but were unable to make the immediate decision to stop whatever it was that he was doing, via the classic bystander effect. Isn't someone going to say something? Is this part of the act? He's running long. Thankfully, it seemed all he wanted to do was standard hypnosis stage tricks, and if you have heard of some generic hypnotist act in TV sitcoms, that's all he did. When I snap my fingers, you think you are a chicken, etc. He was scheduled to do 2 15-minute segments, but after his first went into an hour before he gave the stage back, they asked him not to do part 2, because they were now way behind the schedule. But everyone was in a weird mood, because a few coworkers had, for a few minutes, pretended they were chickens or whatever. I don't know exactly what he did, I am telling this secondhand. All I know is that he was already on thin ice. The worst part is the part that involved the hotel. The magician assumed, for some reason, that he could hang around and mingle with the rest of the crowd after the main ceremonies. There was more than one event at the hotel happening that night, and one was a prom or costume cotillion for a young women's private school. Lot of teen girls in costumes and floofy dresses. The magician was seen mingling and flirting with these girls, and the chaperones came to the hotel to have him removed because he was being creepy. The hotel went to the group who had run the other function, but they said, "We're not in charge of him. Yes, we hired him, he did his weird thing, and he's not really with us, as we're done." Everyone involved had a vibe. This guy was super creepy, and the group was okay with the hotel telling him he had to leave. So, the hotel went to this guy, and he at first said he'd go, but then didn't. So, the hotel got forceful about it, saying that if he didn't leave, he was considered a trespasser. So, he applied for a room at the hotel, so he wouldn't be a trespasser. They refused to give him a room, saying they received complaints about his behavior. Then, rather suddenly, he had a toddler-level meltdown at the front desk. Like, threw himself to the floor, wailing in a high-pitched voice that he was being discriminated, and his rights were being violated. Then the hotel had enough of this guy, and called security. Security was unable to deal with it, as he wouldn't get off the floor, and he was making a huge scene. So, they called the police. The moment the police arrived, he got up and ran away. So, the overweight and not very athletic cops chased him, but they lost him in the hotel for about an hour, until a chaperone from the cotillion said he was hiding under a catering table at their function, looking up girls' dresses. So, the police went into there, and the guy ran out the fire exit, causing the alarm to go off. My friend who tells this story said, the guy sprinted across the hotel parking lot without swinging his arms at all. They stayed pinned to his sides, as he ran to the very edge of the parking lot, near a patch of woods. When he retells this account, he shows what he means, and it's hilarious, like a prancing Irish step dancer, running, with unmoving arms. He assumed that, mere feet away from the hotel property, taunting that he was not trespassing, and thus, the police could not arrest him. His challenged assumption disintegrated when the out-of-breath police immediately tackled him. The cops hauled him into a squad car, while he wailed in tongues, saying he had cursed them all, in accordance with his Himalayan street knowledge. Then they took him away, and no one knows what happened to him. My first job was houseman at a hotel. I was 14, and had the job of basic maintenance, and that guy that would come plunge your toilet. I had to clean up poop and condoms. The worst were hockey teams. First things first, it was my very first day. My very first job. My first task was to vacuum the pool area. As I got started, a team of like 16 to 17-year-olds came in. They were a volleyball team. They made me extremely nervous, because every one of them was hot. I kept vacuuming, and was pissed off, because there was no suction, so I looked like an idiot. The whole time the hose had disconnected itself from the power head, and was latched to my pants by my ankle. I did that for at least 20 minutes before realizing. They kept giggling, with me thinking they dig me, but no, I was vacuuming my ankle the whole time. Another guy called from one of the executive suites saying his TV didn't work, so I went up there and pulled back the giant unit that held the TV, and behind it was a bunch of porn magazines. I'm 14, so this is huge for me. I said, I have to take these to management. I ended up storing them in a storage unit with a bunch of toilet paper, towels, etc., and would go help myself whenever I wanted. I also found out that, while the hotel was 5 stories high, there was another set of stairs to go up to the roof. There was a nice landing at the top of those stairs, so I'd grab a blanket and pillow from said storage room, and make my way up there, and nap until my radio went off. I'd likely just have to plunge a toilet, then go get lunch or supper at cost, so, like 15 wings for $8, and they were huge. Good job, good times. Manager sucked, though. I worked night shift, and was the only employee in the entire hotel, from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Around 3 a.m., I get a few calls about a fight in an upstairs hallway. I grab a pair of scissors, and tuck it up my sleeve, and make my way upstairs, to see what is going on. When I get there are 2 guys having a full-on brawl. I'm 6'2" and very broad-shouldered, but these guys were taller and ripped as hell. As I approached, a third guy, just as large as the other 2, comes out of a room with a knife, yelling, "Get the F off him." I stop a ways away and just shout at them. They all stop immediately and look at me. I'm getting ready to run for it, when they all just deflate. Knife guy drops the knife, the others let go of each other, they all hang their head, and one mumbles, "I'm sorry," under his breath. They looked like a bunch of toddlers, who had just gotten caught stealing cookies. I told them they would have to leave right now, or I would call the police, and they all just nodded. They followed me onto the elevator, and spent the whole time apologizing and pouting, while I escorted them out. I have never seen a situation go from 100 to 0, so fast. Worked in a restaurant that was part of a hotel, so I guess this kind of counts. Had a sommelier, wine expert, who worked in our restaurant, 50s, couple of kids, divorced, living in a ski town for the past 15 years. One night, a guest came in, and over the course of about 2 hours, ordered around $6,000 worth of wine. He bought 3 $2,000 bottles, not totally unheard of, in our fine dining restaurant, but not common either. Our sommelier sat down, and drank all of it with him, getting absolutely hammered drunk, while running up a huge food tab. Again, not uncommon for the somm to have a glass of wine, but not 3 bottles. Overall, bill was around $8,000 with tip, and my manager was stoked on the big sale. About an hour later, he's flipping out. Our somm left with the guy to go get his credit card at the hotel, and never came back. Manager has one of our bussers track the somm down. Turns out, the guest was a disgraced exec, who was in a massive amount of debt, and couldn't pay the bill. When the somm found out, he was too embarrassed to come back and face the music. Our manager fired him. About 6 months later, a friend of my girlfriend went up to visit my old somm at his cabin. The guy had shot himself. Ski towns are fun, but boy, they are depressing places. Don't work at a hotel, but I have a story from a hotel my wife and I stayed at. This was a while back, when money was super tight, so, on this trip, we got what we could afford. From the looks of the parking lot, it looked like it's where building contractors stayed when working out of state. Lots of work trucks. At the time, I had a new GPS, and my wife the night before said, "Bring that in just in case someone breaks in and steals it." Anyway, it was a nice stay and all, but around 8 a.m. we hear, "Hey, what are you doing, mother trucker?" We peeked out the window, and there are two guys fighting, and one guy was beating the ever-loving shit out of the other, like there is blood flying. The victor got into a work truck, and hauled ass out of there. We hung out in the room another hour or so, not to be a part of that. Go to check out the guy that got beaten, is standing outside of the main office, with another guy standing over him, keeping him from leaving. The guy was clearly bleeding, wiping it up with a towel. The victor shows up with a cop behind him, even though we checked out, we parked nearby. So, the story we heard was, the victor happened to look out his window, and see that other guy getting into his truck and stealing tools off the truck, caught him, and beat his ass. The guy standing with the thief, was a co-worker of that guy, that laid the smack down, keeping the thief from running off, till a cop showed up. The guy's truck was parked 2 spaces down from ours. The cops took down the info, and arrested the guy, that was still bleeding profusely, and left. I was working in a pretty fancy hotel, international guests. One morning, I was walking down a hallway, with a room attendant's trolley, and a guest comes to me, trying to explain something, but we didn't speak the same language, making it awkward. So, eventually, he gestures me to come to his room. So, we go, and I follow him to the bathroom. I notice the smell immediately, while he points at his toilet, and when I look, there is just this massive turd there. He's still kinda talking to me in his language, but I don't understand his point. And finally, he presses the button to flush, the toilet flushes, his turd leaves our company, and he looks at me, with such a weird proud expression. I just smiled, put 2 thumbs up, and left. A guest called the police, for a noise complaint, about another room. The police got there, and went up to the noisy room with the front desk receptionist. When they got there, they found a stripper, her 2 kids, her ex-husband, her aunt, and another random man. They were deep frying chicken in the room, at about 10 p.m., on a Tuesday. I remember seeing a man run out of the lobby, with his deep fryer, spilling oil all over the place.